In this episode of Testimony, a musician's story presented by Soundseekers, rapper and coffee roaster Dre Murray shares his Christian testimony. Dre talks about how basketball and fellow Christian athletes changed his life. We discuss the NBA restart and comments made on kneeling from Charles Barkley and Sam Coonrod. Additionally, Dre discusses signing to Illect Records and his new venture into coffee. I am Galika Brown, and this is Soundseekers Presents Testimony, a musician's story. The first thing I want to go over, if you can recall your first music memory, whether it be an artist that you heard, a video that you heard, or if it was anything dealing with you like writing something. What's your
Yeah.
first music memory?
One of my first, because there were so many, because my brothers, like I grew up in the early 80s, so hip hop was like really just starting to be spread. It existed, but it was just starting to be spread. And one of my brothers in particular wanted to be a DJ, and the other he was a break dancer. So there was always break dancing in the house and, b-boy type stuff. And then there was a lot of vinyl records around. So some of my earliest memories, um, were of them breakdancing and listening to vinyl, like Run DMC or Red One, and with some of this vinyl I took from my brother, my oldest brother, actually a couple years back that I have. So that's probably the earliest like pivotal moment for me was Beach Street, this movie called Beach Street in the 80s. And it had this young kid on it that they fought by dancing, and break dancing. I thought that was so dope as a kid, and so that's probably that and Crush Groove are like some of my earliest memories. Just seeing these hip hop artists that you see on the vinyl, and now seeing them talk and actually show personality was huge for me.
Yeah, those two movies, I definitely remember those as a kid.
Yeah.
It was like a whole nother world too, if you weren't from New York. I mean, I was a kid on the West Coast and I'm seeing all this. I'm like, what?
Yeah, yeah. Y'all had breaking out there though on the way. I know it wasn't like Beach Street, but that they tried to create that West Coast version of Beach Street, I guess. I dug those movies as well.
Break-In was, I think, my favorite.
Really?
Yeah.
As a kid, it was too. I look back on it now, and I can see how people can say that's like the glossy, corny version of like Beach Street. But as a kid, it was like this happy vibe. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
No, it
yeah,
wasn't corny as a kid. We didn't know what corny was.
exactly, exactly.
Besides maybe New Kids on the Block, like I had to hide my
Yeah.
love for New Kids as a Block.
You shouldn't hide that.
I did. Like their music video would be on, and I'd be up there. Uh, uh, and then if somebody would come in the room, I would just stop.
That's awesome. We didn't know though. We didn't know. We liked what we liked as kids, man.
Awesome. Okay, so that was that was a new one. I wasn't really expecting you to go back to like early '80s and breaking and all that. That was fun.
Yeah.
Okay, and then so you were a kid. You grew up in Houston, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So was it a two-parent household?
No. My dad and my mom and my dad split when I was about maybe 8 or 9 months. Unfortunately, my dad was in the Vietnam War for a short period of time. He was in the Air Force, and he came back with a heroin addiction. And I don't know if he was, doing heroin prior to that, but my mom became aware of it, I guess, um, shortly after I was born, I believe, as the story goes. I didn't hear the story till I was like really, really, or I was much older. Um, and he tried to go to rehab, and it didn't work, and then they split. So I grew up with my mom, and then we moved in with my grandmother when I was probably about 3. And then from there, it was like my grandmother, my uncles, 2 of my uncles. I had 2 older brothers. My girl cousin moved in at one time. It was just a full house once we actually moved into a rent house in Houston. So, but yeah, no dad.
And then, I mean, heroin is a hell of a drug.
Hmm.
Like, I
Hmm.
know Rick James said cocaine is, but
Yeah,
That's a whole nother beast.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I ask about your father now? Like, what happened with that?
Yeah, so I got a car in 2018. My cousin sold this little bitty Honda Civic to my mom, and I started venturing out into Houston. And I had some conversations with him prior to that, and I'd seen him maybe every 6 or 7 years he would pop up. But I started going to his house when I was 18 and was able to drive. And so we built somewhat of a relationship, never like a father-son relationship. Never talked about things really, just kind of skipped over them. And unfortunately, he passed away in 2016. He had diabetes, and he had some complications in the hospital as they were trying to amputate, you know, uh, some things to save him basically. And so, me being his only child, I was his only child. He had remarried, but she passed away prior to him, and I was his only child. I really had to deal with all of that and take care of his affairs, and not knowing him really like I said, my kids have been around him some, but then me being in Oklahoma now, that just made the separation even further. So I really didn't get to see him that often as I got older, and now I'm going back to Houston, digging into his affairs and trying to figure out who this man was. In the same year, just was it 5 months prior, my son was born, and so he really didn't get to see my son. Now I'm dealing with the birth of my son and the death of my father, and I didn't have my father. So it's like this weird thing that hit me all at once in 2016. So it's been a rough patch since then. I finally kind of, you never really get over it, but started to get better probably about a year ago, I think.
No, that's crazy. That's a
Yeah,
lot to deal with.
yeah, it was a lot. Um, like I said, not really being around him and having somewhat of a relationship, but then having to make the decision to, like, you know, go ahead and let him go, and planning the funeral, and selling his house, and just all kinds of stuff that, dealing with other family that I don't really know. You know what I mean? So it was a lot. It was a lot to deal with, but it was definitely a learning process. Something I learned for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay. So then going back in Houston, so you're in this full house,
hmm
and how do you get to know Christ in that household?
I didn't in that household. As far as, and I say that kind of, I hesitating because we did go to church, and I was introduced to some spiritual things and baptism. We went to church every once in a while, um, but I didn't know what it was all about. And so when I was 18, I played basketball in high school, and I was trying to get to the college level, and I was going to these camps, and just trying to create as much awareness as you can. And there was this one camp my coach sent me to. He was a believer, and he sent me to an FCA camp. Me and another friend of mine, and my grandmother had just been diagnosed with breast cancer, and so I was dealing with that, and I had some kind of foundation, or not foundation, but just seeds that had been planted along the way. And at that camp, we went to chapel all the time, and it was right in my face, and it was a different type of. It was actually getting specific, with walking out this life and discipleship and all kinds of things. And so I got on the stage, and I decided that I wanted to become a believer. It's crazy that I was president of FCA in high school, and I wasn't really I wasn't really a Christian at all, but it was a lot of girls there, so I worked my way up to become the president. And but I made this decision, and then I went back to school, and I wasn't plugged into any type of church. My friends that I was around were not believers. Uh, I was on the south side of Houston. There wasn't my environment was not healthy, and So it lasted for about, as far as my seriousness in my walk, probably about 3 weeks. My friend that was there with me, he made a decision as well, and we were like, man, we're not gonna sin anymore. We're just not sinning. Like,
Ever,
I'm like, how?
ever singing again.
Like, how does that happen? We're at the movie theater, AMC theaters with all of our friends, and we telling them like we were acting like it was a diet or something. Like, we're not gonna eat meat again. It's like, yeah, we're not gonna sin anymore. And they were like, yeah, all right. See how long that lasts. And about 2 or 3 weeks, I think we were back on the same, you know, on the same mission that we were prior to the camp. Um, but then I went to a Christian college and played basketball for a Christian college and got reintroduced again. Lots of chapels, um, and then it stuck. My second year in college, it really stuck, and God, put the fear of God in me, and it became real, and I realized how much I needed Him as a savior, not as this uh, fictional character in the sky, but like somebody that could actually come and save me from the darkness that I was in. And so it really became real around that time. But I had to get out of Houston. I really had to. I wanted to go back home a lot, but I had to stay where I was in Oklahoma and let it sink in.
Yeah, so that kind of like brings up like 2 points for me. One, with you going to the FCA camp. I went to an FCA camp once for basketball.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it. The little huddles and everything. And
Yeah.
I still have like my teal Bible.
Quiet time. You go to quiet time.
And I remember that feeling when I left, like you want to stay in it. Like you do have like this mindset of, yeah, I'm not going to sin anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I was even pen pals with my huddle leader. Like we would write each other. But if there's nothing that you can go to when you go home,
mm-hmm.
if there's no church, no like life group or youth group or something, then yeah, it's going to fade.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I hear the same thing with people who are involved with like Young Life. They go away to these camps and then they come back home. So there has to be like some sort of bridge, something that keeps people connected.
Yeah, that's
and then
good.
the second point about you saying you have to leave Houston, you have to leave home. I feel like for a lot of people, you have to leave home no matter where home is for you. In order for you to just go through that whole process. Or something about like, I don't know, being just solo. I don't know. It just seems like there's something there.
Yeah, no, there definitely is, and it's to your point, like when you go home, not only was I dealing with the external things outside of my home, as far as like the environment of Houston, but my mom and my brothers, they weren't at camp with me. They didn't know what was going on. They knew that it was a FCA basketball camp, right? So I went to go play basketball, and it's kind of like, while my mom did want me to be a good person, the specifics of the gospel were kind of foreign to her at that time. And so it's like learning a new language and coming back home, and now I'm speaking Spanish in the house. They're not going to understand what I'm talking about. And so, to even share that with somebody with this excitement, you get kind of shot down, like, like, what are you so excited about? And then my mom's twin, she is a Jehovah's Witness. And she's been, faithful to that religion, that tradition for, man, since I was a teenager. And so she knew the Bible. She knows the Bible inside and out. And so for me to present an idea to her, and she's someone that I love, me not having no experience with the Bible, is kind of like, I was impressionable. And so while we didn't study the Bible together, that was something I was afraid of, was even telling people about this experience that I had, because I knew they wouldn't understand.
Yeah, I just had a conversation with a guy named Paul Hernandez, and he was saying the same thing. Like, he went away to camp, and he would go to camp like every year, but his father wasn't a believer. So he talked to his father. His father thought he was a fanatic. So yeah, it's like you're on fire for Christ and you want to tell the world, but you're also afraid of how you're going to be received.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. That was a big fear of mine. And I'm an introvert already, so I'm just constantly in my head, and that was something I was in my head about. And until you get around other people that, have that same experience, um, you keep it hidden, and then eventually, if you're not expressing it on a daily basis, it dies, or it starts to die and wither away. And that's what happened to me until I got plugged in at college.
So at college, then, was it just the group of people you were around? They were like solid believers. Like, how did it stick there?
Um, my first year and a half there, I was off the chain. Like I was away from home. Uh, I was a really good athlete, and so I was hanging with a lot of the seniors, and I had met them prior to that because I was another camp that I went to. I went all of my little league coach drove me all the way to Oklahoma to go to this camp because his nephew went there, and so I knew some of the guys on the team because his nephew was like my cousin. And so when I got on campus that summer, I had a fake ID. The first 5 minutes I'm on campus, I had a party to go to. So it just took off from there. And so my first year and a half, my environment was still sick, and even more so now because I'm 400, 500 miles away from home. I can do whatever I want. And so, um, but that sophomore year, the second half of my sophomore year, God, I believe, you know, for whatever reason, I don't know how this all works, but it's this guy named James Mann. He transferred from OU, Oklahoma University, and he played basketball at my school. And his mom and dad, they were pastors, and you know, young black kid like me from the area. He's from California, so he had a whole different vibe to him. Always smiling, you know, has swag. I don't even know if we say that anymore, but it was like he was like me, but he knew the Bible, and it was just the way I'd never seen that before. And then another guy that turned into be one of my friends. The school that I was at for the camp, the FCA camp. He played college ball there. He transferred to the school, to my college, the same year to play basketball. So it was myself, Cedric, and then James Mann is the guy that his parents were pastors. And Cedric was a Christian, just like James was a Christian. He's from Houston, like I'm from here. So it was more, I was able to relate. And then James he gave me this speech one day. Not just me, it was other people in the room, but I felt like he was talking right at me. And it convicted me. And I didn't change overnight. I didn't change the next week or the next couple weeks, but that just stayed with me and just played out. And then finally, there's other circumstances involved, but that second half of that my sophomore year, I just surrendered. And then instead of me surrendering and now, not having a healthy environment, now I have James. Now I have Cedric. And not only am I seeing him every once in a while, we basically live together because we're on campus together. And we're going out of town together for road trips for basketball. And so it was like this perfect storm to where everything just came together, to where I had other believers in my corner. And then I started to venture out and go to James's mom and dad's church and started, you know, befriending them to where they became mentors of mine. Um, and so, yeah, it was just all about my environment just changing and people that actually I could relate to. It wasn't a thing that I felt like, man, I could never achieve that. It was now people that looked like me, walk like me, talk like me, love some of the things that I loved, but they also love Jesus. It was like, man, why I could do this? You know what I'm saying? Like I see it now. So yeah, that's how I plugged in and it stuck.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I mean, in the beginning, it seems like it can be foreign, but
Hmm.
as soon as God gives you like that squad and
Yep.
use your environment, like
Hmm.
it's it's pretty much it's like I'm just not going to say it's a breeze because
No, it's not.
life is not a breeze, period. And being
Mm-hmm.
a Christian doesn't make it any easier, but it does make the walk a little bit more, I don't know. You can walk through it a little bit more gracefully with God.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, I love that. Cause like similar thing happened with me as far as him giving me my squad. Cause you feel like so alone. You're like, there's
Mm-hmm.
nobody I can relate to. And then when you meet someone, it's like, what? Wait a minute.
Yep. Yep.
You're like me and you love Jesus? What
Yep.
what? You know the Bible?
Yep. Yep. It's an amazing thing to feel that.
Um, so yeah, God will give you your squad. You want it,
Mm-hmm.
you pray for it. Like I literally have told people, I'm like, I prayed for you. Like I prayed for it. I
Yeah.
had no idea it was gonna be you,
Mm-hmm.
but I needed this in my life. That's awesome.
Yep. It's dope.
Okay. So well just one quick second. You're kind of not centered in your video.
Oh,
I
am I
don't know
not?
if you see that. Let's see if it looks better.
Is that better?
A little bit. Okay, that's better.
That's better. Okay.
All right. So you played basketball in college.
Yes.
What position?
Played small forward or anywhere on the wing. There were just two wings. So
Okay.
yeah.
And we had the basketball, the NBA restart.
That's what we're calling it.
That's what the hashtag is, NBA restart.
That's what we're calling it. The restart. I don't know about that.
What are your feelings on that?
It feels like an AAU tournament or a you know, one of those tournaments where you go out of town and there's nobody in the stands. You get up at the butt crack of dawn, you go to Burger King, and then your coach loads you on a bus. You roll in and you play, and nobody's cheering. It's just you're tired, and then you got to do it all day long. That's what it feels like to me. For a lot of guys that I know that play ball, you probably can relate. That's what it looks like. It's just with a lot more lights and
They
it's
have
the
the
NBA.
fake cheering.
It's whack, man. I saw it in baseball first. I was watching the MLB game the other day. It was on, and they were talking about the fan cheering thing, and it sounds real, but it's just weird because there's nobody there, and you're hearing, and it's like the laugh track on the TV show.
Yeah.
It does something to your mind, right? It's like, were they doing this all along? Like, I think they were adding some of this in the background to
Yeah.
get us excited. So, I'm sorry to cut you off. I think you were going somewhere with that, but
No, you
I
didn't
don't
cut
call
me
it a
off.
restart.
No, because I definitely did want to talk about that. I mean, I felt the same. The energy was just totally different.
Yeah.
I was just like, what is up with like these virtual like fans? Like, how does that even work? It was just so weird. It kind of felt with you with the AU like tournament thing, that made sense because I was like, it's kind of like kind of feels like a scrimmage, but a little bit
Mhm.
more energy than a scrimmage. And then there were times where it felt kind of video game-ish.
Mhm. Mhm. Yep. Yep.
So
It,
yeah, that was really
which
weird.
is weird all in itself because the feel like we 2020 already feels like we're in a simulation. So now you're like, you got the guys on screen looking like a true video game. It's like where are we? Like I don't know, man. I don't know if I'm gonna watch. I'm not interested at all, to be honest.
Well, I have to say the first game, what was it, the Pelican in Utah? I couldn't
Uh
get
huh.
into it, but the Clippers and Lakers game, that I got
Was
into.
dope.
Yeah,
Okay.
especially the second half. The first half was kind of like, but the second half, that was I was like, okay, I can do this. Depending
Yeah.
on the teams, I can do this.
Yeah.
But it
The,
definitely
the
did.
the gyms are closed around here anyway, and I haven't been able to play. So that's part of my bitterness is that I can't go out and play. So it's like, well, how do they get to play? And I know they're making a ton of money doing it, and people want to see them. But the more I watch, like I had that feeling when I was watching The Last Dance. It's like, man, I used to watch Jordan, and then I would go outside. and,
Yeah.
you know,
Some
shoot
inspiration.
around.
Yeah.
Yeah. But now I just gotta sit here and watch. Like, you know, it's not doing it for me.
You can get you the little Nerf ball and hoop in the house and, and
We
do
got we got one. It's
not
not
the
the same. Be throwing my son down and
Did you get a chance to hear the national anthem, the new little remix?
I didn't. I knew that in football they were doing what I guess what some would call the Black national anthem. Was that what they did here? What did they
No.
do?
It was all instrumental. They had the artist John Baptiste
Mhm.
compose it. So it was so crazy. Like it starts off and it sounds kind of like the national anthem. And
Mhm.
then like the beat changes and I swear it's the sample from like what is the song like get down on the floor.
Oh, I know. Yeah, a
Down on
lot
the
of people
floor.
use that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that came in and then he threw in like some electric guitar. It was just he
A
weaved in a
lot.
lot of different sounds and I saw like some tweets from from um from non-colored people who
Uh
were
huh.
just like I'm not down with this anthem. Like what is
Yeah. Yeah.
um
I didn't know. I didn't hear that. I'm gonna go check that out to see. Yeah, I didn't see that at all.
yeah, I definitely checked that out. And everyone was kneeling for the most part. Well, it looked like to me everybody was kneeling the whole time.
Yeah.
Um, and then did you notice like the jerseys with the statements on them?
I knew that they were doing that, but I didn't see who was wearing what. They were tweeting out that this person had decided on this and that person decided on this, but I didn't actually see them.
Yeah, it was kind of confusing at first because I didn't know that, and I was like, somebody's last name is Freedom.
Okay, that's a great point. Like there and you watch basketball, but imagine a person that doesn't really watch and now they're getting into it, or because they were just sports is on, sports is back, or
Yeah,
even the casual fan that's not on social media like that. It's gonna be super confusing
it
to
is
them.
confusing, and some of them kept their names. Like I think Davis, the Lakers, he kept his name on there,
Oh,
so
okay.
it is definitely confusing. And then I don't know if you got a chance to hear what Charles Barkley said.
I I I remember seeing the clip online and listening, but then I went and read after reading your email. I went back and read an article with quotes of what he said. Um, and yeah, it's Charles. I don't expect. He's always spoken his mind, and it's something that's the quality I appreciate in anybody. And if you really, the problem with a lot of these statements that people are making is that they quickly get politicized on either side. And once you see the response from your favorite media outlet that you're following, whether that be whatever side of the aisle, whatever it is, you just subscribe to that feeling almost. Your emotions have been captured. Uh, but I try to think objectively and try to step back and read the quote of what he was saying. And what I think, and this could have been a misunderstanding or a miscommunication on his part as far as not receiving the information correctly or what was going on. But what I think that he was saying at its core is that to hate another group for not, you know, loving you, to hate everyone in that group now, or to say certain things that would be viewed as hate towards another group, that in itself is wrong. As a believer, I subscribe to that. I'm not going to attack, you verbally, or a group, your the group that you belong to verbally, just because I feel like there are people within that group that um, don't treat me a certain way, don't treat me as a human. Um, and I hope this coming across the right way, but it's I think it is in its simplest form. That's what he was trying to get across, and the message gets lost because it turns into a binary thing to where it's just this or that and not looking at the nuance. Like nuance is gone. Nuance left a few years ago, but 2020 just it nailed it in the coffin. There is no nuance. There is no conversation. It's just which side are you on? But look, let me give you my no. Which side are you on? Left or right? Up or down? Like whatever. Like which side are you on? That's all people want to know.
Yeah.
And
And
it's
if
like,
you're on the
bro,
wrong side, we're canceling you.
exactly. Without an explanation, without a conversation, can we have a cup of coffee and sit down and talk through this? Like just 5 minutes ago, you said you love me and my family. And just 5 minutes ago, you said that I had the hottest song or whatever. Just and now I'm canceled. Like, and first off, how can you cancel a human being? How can you cancel me? Like that from where I'm from, that's starting to sound like a threat. First off, like I don't, you know what I mean? Like canceling. You want to cancel me? Like, I don't get it. And a lot of the people that's canceling people, I honestly believe um, that they've never had any type of real dispute in their life or confrontation in their life, and this is a chance for them to be confrontational uh, without being on the receiving end of what may happen in a true confrontation. It's just you can type whatever and leave,
Yeah.
uh, and so it's unfortunate, but Charles is Charles, you know.
But I have to say, like, I honestly didn't see anything wrong with what Charles was saying.
Yeah.
He he literally said, if people don't kneel, they're not a bad person. Which on the
Hmm.
flip side, right? If people don't stand, they're not a bad person.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
everyone was upset with Colin for kneeling,
Hmm.
and now people are going to be upset with people for not kneeling.
Yeah.
Now, but at the same time, what is your reason for not kneeling?
Right. Right.
That's what I think it comes down to.
Yes.
That heart intention.
Which
So
no one can know,
yes,
right? Which
yes,
no one can know. And then the problem is when you come out and you voice, when they ask you why, and you state why, on either side, you state why, the other side says you're lying. So it's like you asked me a question, I gave you an answer,
yeah,
and now you're telling me I'm lying without any evidence of me lying,
yeah,
you know, digging in my history. And it's just, it baffles me. We cancel people that have stood up for certain things their whole life, and they get to a certain point and they just disagree slightly with something that's going on, and they are no longer, all that stuff they did in the past doesn't matter. um I was reading this Martin Luther King biography. He has a ton of them out there, but was reading in where, it talked about John Lewis and his um, Snick days and Stokely Carmichael and just the disagreements that they would have with Martin Luther King. Everybody wanted the same thing, but they were trying to get there in different ways. Um, and then I would watch video. I would read something and I would try to find the video of it. And there was this beautiful moment where I would try to send you the link where Stokely Carmichael is walking there. He and Martin Luther King are marching, and there's a reporter there. And the reporter is asking them a question about their methods. They both disagree while walking. And there is no, hey man, nah, 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 nah. They are stating their side of the argument in love, why they, disagree, why Martin is wrong, why Stokely is wrong. But then you go to the book and they talk about the behind the scenes, and they were like really beefing behind the scenes, and it was like some heated arguments at times, and things were said. But in public, we're just going to state what we have to state. We're going to handle that business
yeah. That's family
behind
business.
closed
Don't
doors.
take
That's
it
family
back.
business.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I know that you're a genius. I know you're trying to get somewhere that I'm trying to go. We just disagree on the method. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, that's what we are.
Yeah, I mean, that's unfortunate that we can't do that now. Because
Yeah.
even with like, I mean, the whole Black Lives Matter movement, there are people who are on different ends of it. Like we all, like for the most part, like everyone's for, yes, Black Lives Matter,
Hmm.
but the like what's behind it, like how are you trying to achieve that?
Hmm.
What
Hmm.
goals are you trying to? Just the methods are
Hmm.
can be different.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, all right. Well, going back to the whole kneeling and then choosing not to kneel. I don't know if you're familiar with the Sam Coonrod, the Giants pitcher, who said that he wasn't gonna kneel because he was a Christian.
I didn't see that story, but I'm sure it's similar to some of the others that I that I
Yeah,
read.
it is. His statement is, I mean no ill will by it. I don't think I'm better than anyone. I'm a Christian. I just believe I can't kneel before anything besides God, Jesus
Mm.
Christ. So I mean that's
Oh, I did see that. I'm
yeah,
sorry. I did see that. Yep.
that was
Yep.
like I think last week or maybe the
Yep.
beginning of this week. So I mean, what do you think? I mean, being a Christian, shouldn't that be more reason to kneel? Would Jesus kneel?
Yeah. Um. That's a tough one because even with Christianity now, even with like what Jesus are you talking about?
Mm,
And I mean that in a way of the interpretation. Like we used to have disagreements back in the days about certain interpretations, and then you would say, well, we agree on the core ideals of what it is. So this is just ancillary stuff. Like this is just things that we can not overlook, but we just agree to disagree. Now, man, it's the whole picture of what's going on. Like I don't know when we say Jesus, what are you talking? It used to be when we say God, what God are you talking about? Like yeah, I
mm,
might not, but now it's Jesus because and I guess it's always kind of been like this, but now because there's a political um, um, component to it, to this whole argument, because it's now, you know, white Jesus first black Jesus, and where did Christianity come from, and it's becoming more of that in the
yeah,
conversation. So now it's really coming down to, and I think the other stance would be you're worshiping white Jesus, and
yeah,
because you don't want to, and it's like I don't know, like what are we talking about? Like what's the actual discussion about? Are we
yeah,
talking about Jesus, or are we talking about this stance that you're taking for this cause, which is, and again, I'm speaking right now. I'm speaking object. I'm looking at both sides. I'm not taking a stance. I have a stance, but I'm not taking a stance right now. So, what again? Back to what you said. What is the reason for you saying that? Because even with you saying I'm a Christian, um, you know, I only kneel for. I don't know what the exact quote was, but even with you saying that, it's like I don't know if we are agreeing on the same idea of Jesus based on the scriptures. Even we can read the same scripture and disagree. So it gets even harder to like determine what someone's true motive. I mean, you really can't anyway, but to when they try to put a name to it or a face to it, like I'm doing this because of this, we might not even agree on what the this is. Like
yeah.
you have a different this than I have. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, um, so with those situations, I'm just kind of like, man, that's him. That's what he wants to do,
Yeah.
and he has to deal with those consequences. You know what I mean? Like because there's going to be backlash, and you got to be man enough to stand up to that backlash. And so that's all I can say about it.
True that. True
Yeah,
that. And good point. Like, well, we'll never really know what anyone's true intentions are, what their heart is.
yeah,
So, okay. Well, let's get into the music.
awesome.
So we
Woo!
know testimony. Move past hot topics, get into the music.
Yeah.
How did you even get into music, period? How'd you start rapping?
Um. Again, going back to that '80s story, like My brother tried to be a DJ. My oldest brother, my brother that was in the middle, he was breakdancing all the time. It was constantly hip hop around, and I can just remember we were in apartments, and then we moved to a house, a rent house, and we had this um, stereo system. And I just remember one day them plugging. I don't know if it was the headphones that they plugged in or a microphone. I think it was the headphones, and we just used the headphone as a mic. And some kind of way, my brother figured out that you could use that to record your voice, and I got hooked on hearing my voice back. It was just weird. And so from there, I just kind of would make, and I see it's crazy. I see my daughter doing this all the time, like making up songs, and I would start making up songs just in my head and messing around. And then from there, when I was in fourth grade, there was the DARE program. Nancy Reagan came out with the DARE program after,
I remember that.
things were done it's a whole nother story. It was the cover up after, but DARE came, right? And it's like this uh, movement against drugs. And our school were passing out these DARE t-shirts. The bear was there, or they had the bear stickers or whatever it was. And you had to do a project on DARE. And I wanted to do a song. And so I conned a friend of mine that was like in fourth grade. He was what you would consider a nerd. He wanted to learn how to play basketball. And I was like, I'll teach you if you hook up my radio and make me be able to record. And he did. I don't remember how he did it, but I was able to put a tape in, an instrumental tape. I think it was like DJ Quick's Groove or something like that. And I wrote and recorded my first like song against drugs and gun violence in the community. And from there, it took off. Got with one of my cousins who his dad had some equipment, and we just would record and mess around all the time. So from 8 years old on, I was hooked.
8 years old, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I had older brothers, so it was like, you see them doing certain things and you wanna do it quicker than what they did and better.
So then how did you transition? Because I know you weren't doing Christian raps then.
Not at all. Not at all. I was at 12 years. Crazy.
Some more stuff you didn't know about, hopefully.
To a certain extent, yes, but it was stuff that I definitely. There's a lot of stuff that was real, but I wasn't actually shooting people. Yeah.
So how did you transition to Christian hip hop?
In college, once I became a believer in college, I was still rapping. I found a studio in Oklahoma City. It was like the first real studio I went to and recorded. This was prior to me being a believer. And once I became a believer, that was one of the struggles I had anyway, was like, God, what am I going to rap about? Like, is every song going to sound the same? And once I became a believer, I tried to write a song, and it didn't sound like what you would consider a Christian hip hop song now, but you could tell that I wasn't on the type of time that I was previously. And from there, the more that I, got plugged into church and my environment began to change, my lyrics began to change as well. And then people started to actually want me to use that in certain spaces. So whether it be going to an apartment complex in the area and they have like a block party for the kids or whatever, or, even on my campus at chapel, I was allowed to talk about my testimony and then do a few songs. And so the more I was encouraged to do that, it just kind of took a life of its own. And, I think my oldest brother he was a believer before I was. And he introduced me to Christian hip hop. And so I had some of that in my head already of what a structured Christian hip hop song would look like. Most of my songs, it was like 2 verses about the dark stuff, and the last verse is like, okay, we're gonna get to the redemption of this whole story. Like every song pretty much is like that. And then the last song would be this, all right, now close your eyes and say this prayer with me. And so it was like this structure that I had early on, but it it built me up in the faith for sure.
Okay. And then I saw you posted a few weeks ago that Gold Rush, maybe one day. It was the 7-year anniversary of that album.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that, like, Collision Records experience, because it was definitely a moment for the Christian hip hop culture. I mean, as
Hmm.
a fan, that for me, that moment stood out the most. Like everything
Wow.
Collision did and put out.
Yeah. It was God bringing this. I look back on it and just see how even prior to me signing with Collision, like things were starting to percolate and build up to where it would make sense if all the artists that were a part of Collision got together, without us even verbalizing it. You know, Wit, um, who's super producer, worked with me. He began to work with the guys that were involved in Collision. And slowly we begin to, our paths begin to intersect even before Collision. And so I had Swoop on project that I had prior to Collision. Um, Me and Alex collaborated prior to that. Just before I signed, Kristen Gray, he and I collaborated on something, and so it was just kind of this whirlwind that we were all swept up in, and we couldn't stop if we wanted to. And then the We Live as Kings thing just took us all by surprise because we were individual artists, and then like that, we were a group. It's like we didn't sign up to be a group, but you got the number one gospel album in the country. Like, what does that even mean? And to be, you know, be in Billboard magazine because of it, and we didn't even tour that project. We didn't really hit the road at all. We didn't see each other that often because we were so spread out. Um, and so it was a crazy time. I'm sure it looked different on the outside than what we knew was going on the inside. But it was definitely a learning experience from an artistic standpoint, whether that be me having to like rewrite lyrics, because I submitted them to the group and I'm like, what do you think about this? And now it's not a bunch of yes men. Now it's people that's like, that you can do better than that. Like, let's do it again. So I definitely learned in that regard. Then from a business standpoint, there were so many things that were different from a business standpoint, of like having a third party accounting firm send you your checks versus it just being out of a shoebox, or uh or having somebody else set up interviews and set up your dates and having itineraries. And it was a lot, man, to learn. And I love the experience. There were ups and downs with just like with anything in life, but I look back on it and I'm grateful for it, the friendships that I had at the time. And yeah, it was a definite time in Christian hip hop like I hadn't really experienced before, even as a fan.
Yeah, and even, I mean, the We Live as Kings album, I listened to it probably about a month ago.
Hmm.
And I mean, it stands the test of time. Like, that album
Mm,
still slaps.
really?
Yeah, for real. I
I
was,
haven't heard it in so long, man. I haven't heard it in a long time.
yeah, it's been a minute for me. I probably hadn't heard it in, I don't know, like 5 years or so.
Wow.
And it just like randomly shuffled onto a song. And then I was like, this song still, I was like, I forgot about this song.
Yeah.
Let me check out
That's
the
awesome.
album and like straight through. I mean, because the intro, everything to the end, I was like,
Hmm.
all right, album still jams.
That's awesome. Yeah, I wasn't sure about that album at first because it didn't sound like that. Like we laid our vocals in different places. The production was like bare bones at first. And then Swoop he flew up with to Delaware with Wit, and they sat for probably a week to 2 weeks and just added all that stuff that you hear, the transitions and so when I heard the final, I was like, this ain't the album I heard before. Because I'm telling you, when I first heard the first version, I was like, man, this is, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how people are gonna receive this, but it turned out amazing.
And now you signed to Illect Records.
Yes, Illect Recordings. Yes, yes.
Okay. And what about the decision to do that?
Well, Josh, who is the owner of Illect Recordings, he helped a lot. Well, Josh is an industry vet first and foremost. Like he used
Yes.
to be he used to run Up Rock Recordings, which was a part of Tooth and Nail and BEC. So he had, you know, Tunnel Rats and Propaganda's, or some of Propaganda's early work, and KJ52, and you name it. And so then with Elect, a whole gamut of other artists that are, classic artists. He worked with Collision during that time that you're talking about. So a lot of the awareness that was created around those projects, he had a hand in on the PR side. And so um, we built a relationship from that point, just in passing kind of. And then um, after I left Collision, he still was somebody that he loves helping. Like there's a lot of artists that I know that have never signed to Elect that Josh has helped out as an independent artist, and he's done a lot of work for them behind the scenes. Doesn't get a lot of credit because he's not all in the videos, all like he's behind the scenes. And
To
so
say Josh has connected me with a lot of artists as well. So
really,
some of the interviews I've gotten has been with the help of Josh. Like Josh is
yeah,
dude.
yeah, he's one of the, like, we don't have a big machine for Christian hip hop, but he's one of those cogs in this little machine that we have that keeps it going. And so I just built this relationship with him, and a couple of years ago we started kind of talking about what that would look like, me being a part of Elect. And last year in November, I think we just decided that it was time to like partner up, and we worked everything out. But I didn't sign until May. I didn't sign the contract until May because I was still trying to figure out um, the independent game as far as streaming and all that and algorithms. I wanted to know some of that stuff before I just jumped into a situation with somebody else. And so he has a better understanding of it than I do because he does it on a daily basis. But he's definitely somebody that I wanted to partner with, that I feel comfortable. Here is what I have. What can we do with this? Um, and he like sent a message to. I told him my wife was, because of everything that's happened in the past, she was apprehensive about me signing with somebody. She's like, what can they do that you can't do on your own, basically? And so he thought it was serious enough to actually send like a voice message through to where he addressed her and said who he was and laid down what he does and what he wanted to do, and how much he was invested in me as an artist. And so that made a lot of difference too. Like for somebody to do that is
Yeah,
huge.
he didn't
Yeah.
have to do that. And
Yep.
I saw the post you did when you were signing the contract, and you had a really
Mhm.
long post about your wife and your daughter. One, your daughter thought that you were giving up rapping,
Mhm.
and she didn't want you to give it up. And then your wife about how she was there with you when you were trying to hustle CDs out the trunk.
Mhm. Mhm.
Do
Yep.
can you elaborate on that as far as just like your family and their involvement in what you do?
Yeah, I want to get them involved even more because the Collision time, like I have 3 kids now. My son doesn't know anything about the Collision time. He's born in 2016. My second oldest daughter, she's the one that didn't want me to quit and was asking questions. She's very much like me and making up songs all the time. My oldest is creative as well, but my second oldest, just as far as the music is concerned. And so I want them to be more of a part. I want them to see me doing stuff to inspire them because, like I said, my wife, she was there with me breaking down jewel cases and had her family putting the CD, burning the CDs and putting them in the jewel cases, putting the flaps on. Like, she was there with me passing out CDs on the street for free. And she's like, maybe you should start selling these so you can make some more CDs. Like, it's cost money. Um, and so, yeah, I want them to be included because um, they're where I gain most of my inspiration from now. Like, I don't listen to a whole lot of music. anymore. I spend a lot of time with my family though, and I want them to, like I said, my kids to be inspired creatively by what I do, and to hear what I'm saying in my music, instead of just me sitting them down for a talk. They can actually listen to something and get it because they love music. And so yeah, it's a huge part of my life.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And how do you segue from like music into the coffee business?
So what's interesting is coffee made the Gold Rush, or helped make the Gold Rush project.
Oh,
I
okay.
had 4 days to lay down vocals for that project. I was at Witt's house, and we were in his downstairs where the studio was, and I slept on the couch right next to the mixing board and stuff, or the interface and the booth, and we would stay up late and record. And he introduced me to, I drank coffee before, but he introduced me to, like, a higher grade of coffee than what I was used to. And I fell in love with it. And not only that, it was like, man, I would wake up in the morning and just, I remember waking up writing Benjamin's Curse like that, like super fast. Like, man, I want to say like 30 minutes or something like that. Just sitting down and just writing, and then him coming downstairs, and I'm like, let me record this really, really quick, or 713, like just hopping in the booth, and Wes Pendleton being there and making the beat, and me just hopping in the booth and just going and just doing it. And I know some of that was just where I was creatively at the time, but coffee had a big part to play in that, in my being alert.
Yeah. Well,
And so, do what?
you said it was a little stimulant.
It was definitely a stimulant. And then from there, I just fell down this rabbit hole of, what's behind this door, what's behind that door. And that turned into me meeting people that knew me from the music, but were also lovers of coffee. Like, there's a girl, there's a company called Onyx in Arkansas, well-known coffee company, roasters, and serve specialty coffee. There's a barista there. I'm on this group now with all of these black baristas and coffee industry people, and she was one of the ones on the group. She works for Onyx, and she probably messaged me and was like, We Live as Kings, that album impacted me so much. Let me send you a bag of coffee. And I was like, dude, this is crazy how
What?
the coffee industry and the hip hop world just intersects so much. There's another guy that was at the first We Live as Kings, the unofficial We Live as Kings show. It was my signing day. They
Mm.
announced me as an artist at Wheaton College in Illinois. He was at that college. He was at that show. Now he was in Essence magazine yesterday for his coffee roasting company, Coffee Black,
Okay.
Bartholomew Jones, and he's an artist as well. We talk all the time, and I told him the other day, I was like, man, this is crazy that at one time he actually opened for us at that show, and now you're giving me game on the coffee side. And I was like, this has just come full circle to where he's giving me plugs with, podcasts in the coffee industry, other roasters. And so, yeah, it's kind of like a natural, it's not that far of a jump. You know what I mean? It really isn't when you come from a hip hop space.
And is your company the Black Gold Creative? Is that
Black Gold Creative, yes, that's the name of the overarching media company. Um, I'm starting to roast my own coffee, and AHH. You said, like, coffee, but that's the initials for each one of my kids, Aubrey, Hallie, and Houston. And so that'll be the coffee roasting company that I'm building aside from Black Gold Creative.
okay? That's dope. That's
Yeah,
exciting.
yeah.
So, how would you say that God's presence looks like just in your life, just in general, personally, with your business ventures and all of that, family?
I was someone that would go back and forth all the time about, like, is this God's plan for my life? Like, on small decisions, does God want me to do this? And it was the way that I was taught, that, and I remember hearing a sermon or something. It was just like, you know, so, and there's a scripture in Proverbs where it just basically talks about your action. Your action is where it determines, God blesses your action, or essentially you begin to act and God will stop you if it's not the correct way. Like if you are in tune with the Holy Spirit, I feel like I am in tune with the Holy Spirit, and if I'm venturing out somewhere that I'm not supposed to be, that I'll know that this is the wrong way to go. And so now I spend a lot less time pondering things and going back and forth. And so I like to take action because I'm trusting that if it is the right or wrong way to go, that I'll be notified. And if it's the right way to go, I also know, like, man, this is amazing, and I know that, there are some things that I feel like the things that I used to do back in the day where it was like, oh, this is amazing, but I knew that it was wrong. Like, that it's wrong. It just feels amazing, but you still know that it's not the right thing to do, right?
Yeah.
There are things now where I'm like, man, this is amazing. And I have that same sense of like, this is a godsend. Like, this is supposed to be this way. And so that's how his presence is now. It's not more. Back in the day, I just was more insecure. I wasn't as confident. I wasn't as confident in the Holy Spirit, like confident in what God had already done in my life. Like, it was like I was putting Jesus back on the cross every day, like, doing that over and over again, when he's kind of like, we did this already, dude. Like, this is 2003. This is 2020. Like, why would you got this, basically, you know what I mean? You're trusting in me. I got you. Like Peter on the boat, like, just walk, dude, just walk. Like, I'm not going to let you fall. If you begin to slip, I got you. We have to trust in that. So that's where I am with it right now. About the action right now, more so than is this God's will for my life? Should I eat this burger? Or should I? You know what I'm saying? I don't eat meat, but you know what I mean?
Okay. About that action. Action
Yeah.
Jackson. All right. So, new music. When are we going to get that?
Well, I didn't drop. Illect dropped a single today that I'm a part of called Better. Sivion from D Space 5 is his song. I'm featured on it with Sojourn, and I think you pronounce her name Rianne Darling, is a vocalist. But I am working on a few singles right now for Illect, and I already have a project that, is probably about, as far as the recording, probably about 80% done, that will be released on Illect at some point in time. But I also want to do another project, and just, figure out which will come first. So very soon, though, like very, very soon. I got some stuff recorded now that'll be released fairly quickly on Illect. So I'm excited about that. Nervous, but I'm excited.
I'm excited. I'm sure a lot of people like myself are excited to hear some new Dre Murray.
I hope so, man, because social media is deceiving. Like, you just don't. It is, man. Like, you just don't. I have to snap out of it sometimes. Like,
yeah. I
this
mean,
is not real life, bro.
It is deceiving, and it is hard, and sometimes you feel like you're doing things in vain. At least I know I feel like I'm doing things in vain sometimes.
I do too. I'm like, this doesn't feel, this feels yucky.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? So I get you. I get it.
No, but I definitely have missed just your voice. So whenever I see anything with the Dre Murray feature, I get excited. I was feeling that Better single, that single jams. And then I got excited when I saw that you were on Brinson's project, and I already talked to Brinson about this. So excited to see the Dre Murray feature, and then I was disappointed.
When it was just a hook.
It was just a hook. I'm like, are you serious? I even went back and played it again. I was like, did I just miss it?
That's Brenson's fault. What did I'm curious. I haven't watched that. I'm gonna go watch that episode. But what did he say
He
about it?
basically was like, well, he said there's always room for a remix. We can do that.
Oh my gosh, he gave you that. He gave you that version. He gave you that version. We're gonna work on something soon, man. We've been talking, like, that's my guy. Brinson is like my real friend.
Yeah,
Out of the people that I've met in this industry, I can say that he's like one of my real friends. And so we connect on stuff other than the music, but we need to connect on something soon with me doing a verse and not
yeah.
just a hook.
With you doing a verse, for sure.
Yes.
Happen. All right. My last question for you is, you've done a few interviews with me. Who would you like to see me interview?
Wow, that's a great question. I'm gonna take it back. Let me think. I'm gonna take it back. Back. I would like for you to interview. Do you know Serene Poems, right?
Yeah.
From LA Symphony.
Mm-hmm.
He's on Elect as well. And the reason why I say him is because he was a part of a legendary crew, the LA Symphony crew. And I'm sure he has some crazy stories about that time. And then he's expressed this in music as well, just his relationship with his father, that whole relationship, or I don't know how you would call it, lack thereof, or whatever the case. But yeah, so that's somebody that I would want to hear from. And his voice is just amazing. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. And thank you for taking the time to talk with me.
Yes, thank you for reaching out. You know, I don't get a lot of requests these days because I'm not doing that trappity trap rap, and so, but I'm appreciative of this, and yeah, much success to you, and I'm glad that you're back doing this because there's not a lot of voices, and definitely not a lot of female voices in this circle, in this space, and we need perspective. We need the other side. I don't like being in the room with a bunch of testosterone all the time, where it's just this one mindset and everybody's saying the same thing. So thankful that you're doing it.
I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please subscribe to our show. And if you really enjoy the content, please leave a review. It really does help with the ranking. For all things testimony, visit testimonystories.com. Until next time, I'm Gilika Brown, the music lover constantly seeking positive music.